every ally still willing to stand against the Greeks. And from distant Ethiopia came Memnon, bringing warriors, prestige, and hope. He did not arrive for conquest or glory. He came because loyalty demanded it. When his kinsmen called, Memnon crossed the world to stand beside. The myth of Anansi and death. Now, this story comes from the Akan peoples of West Africa, where stories are not merely entertainment, but inheritance, passed from voice to voice, memory to memory, as carefully as names and bloodlines. Now, in this story, it speaks of the beginning, when the world was still simple and its rules had not yet hardened. And there was Anansi, the trickster, who was gifted by knowing many things. He knew how to listen when others spoke too much. He knew how to wait when others rushed forward blindly. He knew how to take a small advantage and turn it into a lasting gain. And this is why he survived. Anansi was not the strongest. He was not the bravest. He did not rule through force or command, but he was clever. And in a world shaped by consequence, cleverness carried weight. He was known by many other names, most notably the Spider. And oftentimes he appeared as a spider, other times as a man, often both at once. He moves between forms as easily as thought between ideas, because he represents the mind itself at work. He is the keeper of stories, the bringer of knowledge, the reminder that intelligence is a form of power. And through Anansi, wisdom is passed not through strength, but through attention. He was a trickster, but never a fool, a survivor, not a coward. Where others confront obstacles directly, Anansi goes around them. While others accept fate, Anansi tests it, gently, patiently, with curiosity sharpened into strategy. And so, in a world that listens to the clever, Anansi endures. The approach of death. Death did not arrive suddenly. It never does. Among the Akan, death is not a shout in the dark, but a quiet shift in the rhythm of living. It moves softly, announced not by noise, but by patterns, by things going slightly out of step. It appeared in the smallest ways, a stiffness in the joints that did not leave with rest, a weariness that lingered longer than it once had, a pause in the breath where there had never been one before. Time itself seemed to change. Days no longer stretched forward with the same generosity. The future felt closer, heavier, as if it had begun to lean inward. Death had entered the space, not as an intruder, but as a presence. And Anansi noticed, as he always did. He watched the signs without fear. He felt the shift without panic. Where others would have prayed or pleaded, Anansi observed. He was measured, he was calculated. Because to Anansi, this too looked like the problem with a shape. And if a thing had a shape, it could be understood. And if it could be understood, Anansi believed it could be solved. The trap. Anansi prepared carefully, not in haste and not in fear. He wove a web unlike any he had made before, not for insects, not for prey, but for possibility. Each strand was laid out with intention, measured against its silent self. Each knot was reinforced, not by strength, but with patience. This was not a hunter's web. It was a question cast into the shape of a trap. The web shivered faintly in the light, not because it was visible, but because it disturbed something deeper. It caught light the way that thought catches doubt, invisible to all but the most attentive eye. And it waited, already complete, already listening. When death came, it came as it always does, silent, patient, unquestioned. No warning preceded it, no force accompanied it. Death stepped forward, unaware that this space had already been altered, that the pattern it relied on had been interpreted. And then the web closed. Not violently, not suddenly. It gathered death in the way that a pause gathers breath. And for the first time, death was held. Not wounded, not threatened, just stopped. And the world hesitated. Breath lingered where it should have passed. Moments stretched thin, as if time itself were waiting for instruction. The final step, the one that always came, failed to arrive. The universe did not break. Goddess who did not accept drought. In the late Bronze Age city of Ugarit, along the coast of what is now Syria, clay tablets are pressed with cuneiform signs that preserve one of the oldest storm myths in recorded history. Among those tablets was a story of Baal, the storm god, and within that story stands a figure who does not wait quietly for events to unfold. Her name is Anet. Now, Baal was not merely a god of thunder in this narrative. He represents rain, fertility, agricultural survival. In a region dependent on seasonal storms, Baal's vitality determines whether crops grow or fail. When Baal rises, the land flourishes. When Baal falls, droughts threaten everything. The Baal cycle describes a cosmic conflict. Baal clashes with Yam, the sea. Later, he confronts Mot, the god of death and sterility. These are not abstract enemies. Yam represents chaotic waters. Mot represents drought, dryness, the swallowing stiffness of death. And at one point in the narrative, Baal is defeated. Now, the text becomes fragmentary, but the message is clear. The storm god disappears. The rains cease. The agricultural cycle halts. And for a Bronze Age society, this is not symbolic drama. This is catastrophe. And this is where Anat enters with force. Anat is often described as Baal's sister. In some traditions, she is also his ally or consort. But the text makes one thing unmistakable. She is not subordinate. She is fierce, independent, emotionally intense. When Baal falls, Anat does not collapse into mourning. She reacts. The Ugaritic texts describe her rage in striking terms. She seeks out those who are responsible. She seizes enemies. She attacks without hesitation. The language is violent. She grabs warriors. She splits them. She scatters bodies. One passage describes her wading knee-deep in blood. Another describes her rejoicing in slaughter. This detail is uncomfortable for modern ears, but it tells us something important. In this world, violence carried out in defense of cosmic order is not shameful. It's necessary. Anat does not hesitate because hesitation would mean drought continues. She does not negotiate because negotiation does not bring rain. And myth does not portray her as irrational. It portrays her as decisive. The slaughter imagery is vivid, almost ritualistic. The battlefield becomes a space of sacred correction. Blood is not randomly cruel, it's restoration through force, through tribal theology. Anat's loyalty to Baal is absolute. When he is threatened, she becomes the weapon. But her most significant confrontation is not merely with human enemies. It is with Mot. Mot is not simply a rival deity. Mot represents death itself, sterility, dry earth, the swallowing void that ends growth. So when Baal descends into the realm of Mot, drought grips the land. Anat searches for him. Now, the texts describe her journey into grief, but grief does not paralyze her. She confronts Mot directly. The fragment suggests imagery once again. Anat seizes Mot. She cuts him. She burns him. In some reconstructions, she grinds him and scatters him like grain. Even if the exact sequence varies due to damaged tablets, the symbolic pattern is unmistakable. She does not reason with death. She dismantles it. This is not a goddess of comfort. This is a goddess of intervention. The violence serves a purpose. Eventually, Baal returns. The storm resumes and rain falls. Thus, fertility is restored. Without Anat's ferocity, that restoration does not occur. Now, in the structure of myth, Baal may be the storm, but Anat is the enforcer of its return. She is not ornamental to the story. She is essential to the resolution. Now, archaeologically, her presence is not confined to myth alone. Inscriptions and cultic materials found in Ugarit confirms that she was actively worshipped. Kemetic or Egyptian texts mention her name, indicating a cross-cultural recognition. Later inscriptions referencing Anat Yahu suggest that her memory survived into adapted forms even beyond the collapse of Ugarit. But the Baal cycle remains her clearest portrayal. In that portrait, Anat is not the nurturing mother archetype familiar in many myth systems. She is tribal protector. She is the embodiment of loyalty carried to its extreme. Her joy in battle is not random cruelty. It reflects a worldview in which survival is fragile and threats are constant. The late Bronze Age Levant was not a stable world. City-states rose and fell. Agricultural cycles could fall. Warfare was common, and political alliances shifted. A society in that environment does not imagine divinity as passive. It imagines divinity as fiercely protective. Anat does not apologize for violence. She sanctifies it when it preserves order. This is a crucial distinction. Her brutality is not chaos. It's simply boundary enforcement. She defends Baal. She defends fertility. She defends continuity. And in that way, Anat represents a specific kind of sacred feminine power. Not romantic love, not cosmic abstraction, but embodied physical defense. Her myth forces uncomfortable questions. Can violence actually be sacred? Can destruction be restorative? Is loyalty more important than mercy in unstable societies? Now, from the authors of the Baal cycle, the answer appears to be yes. Anat's blood-soaked battlefield is not a moral failure. It is divine necessity. And that necessity restores the storm. When Baal rises again, the land breathes. Rain falls, crops grow, life resumes. The cycle continues. Anat does not claim the throne. She does not demand worship in the text climax. She recedes once balance is restored. The restraint is telling. She is not driven by conquest. She is driven by defense. Her violence has purpose, and when that purpose is fulfilled, she stands down. In comparative mythology, Anat stands apart because of the clarity of her ferocity. She is not softened. She is not reinterpreted as gentle. The tablets preserve her intense, unapologetic, and loyal. That preservation gives us a rare insight into the psychology of ancient culture. In a fragile world, survival is sacred. In a fragile world, protection may require force. Anat embodies the logic without hesitation. She is not storm, she is not fire. She is blade and blood in defense of continuity. In the Baal cycle, drought threatens civilization. Anat refuses to let drought win. And in that refusal, she becomes one of the most striking examples of the fierce, protective, feminine in ancient Near East. She is the goddess who did not accept death as final. She is the one who confronted drought with steel. She is Anat. Angrboda, the grief bringer. In Norse cosmology, the end of the gods has a mother, and her name is Angrboda. She does not rule a hall in Asgard. She does not sit among the Aesir. She doesn't even shout across battlefields. She simply stands in Ironwood, and from her comes Ragnarok. In Jotunheim, far from the ordered halls of Asgard, stood a region known as Ironwood, a place of shadow, prophecy, and old power. There lived Angrboda, a Jotun, not a goddess of Asgard, not a servant, not subordinate, but a being of primordial force. Her name means she who brings grief. And in Norse myth, names are not simply decorative. They are destiny. She is not introduced with fanfare, no feast hall, no divine spotlight. She exists in the margins, and the margins is where fate is born. The union of chaos. Into Ironwood comes Loki, the trickster, the shapeshifter, the fracture in divine order. What happens between Loki and Angrboda is not a romance mythology. This is alignment. This is chaos meeting inevitability. From this first union are born three beings who would define the end of the gods. Fenrir, the wolf who would devour Odin. Jormungandr, the serpent who will poison the skies battling Thor. And Hel, the sovereign of the dishonored dead. Now understand the weight of this. From her, she births the end of Odin, the death of Thor, and the ruler of the underworld. This is not coincidence, this is structural myth design. The mother of Ragnarok. The gods discover these children, and they panic. Fenrir is chained. Gormagad is cast into the sea. Hel is sent to rule the dead. The Aesir try to contain the future, but Angrboda, she is not slain, she is not imprisoned, she is not even punished. She remains in Ironwood, just watching. There is something chilling about that. The father is bound in chains after his crime. The children are exiled, but the mother, untouched. Because she represents something older than the Aesir. She is not rebellion, she is consequence. The shadow feminine. Angrboda does not swing a hammer like Thor. She does not sit on a throne like Odin, and she does not boast like Freya. But she births inevitability. In mythic structure, she represents the womb of catastrophe, the feminine aspect of fate, the quiet architect of endings, and the shadow mother archetype. She is the inversion of the nurturing goddess, not because she is evil, but because she gives birth to what must happen. In Norse cosmology, even the gods cannot escape fate, and Angrboda is one of fate's instruments. Why she matters. Without Angrboda, there is no Fenrir. There is no world serpent. There is no Hel. There is no Ragnarok as we know it. She does not dominate the text, but she dominates the outcome. And that's the myth at its sharpest. The loudest characters are rarely the most powerful. Sometimes the one who stands in the forest is the one who changes the mythic world. Irzuli Danto, the scarred mother, the fire, the protector. There is a goddess who does not smile softly. There is a goddess who does not ask for admiration. She stands scarred. She stands armed. She stands holding a child in one arm and a blade in the other. This is Irzuli Danto. She is not delicate romance. She is not silk and perfume. She is love forged in violence. She is the petrol fire of Haitian voodoo. And where she lives in cosmology. Now, in Haitian voodoo, there is a distant creator, Bondi. Bondi does not interfere directly in daily life. Instead, humans interact with Iwe, the spirits. The Iwe are not gods in the Western Greek Olympian sense. These are forces, personalities, ancestral intelligences, archetypal energies. And among the Iwe, there are two major energetic currents. Rada, which is cool, ancestral, and stabilizing, and Petro, which is hot, reactive, revolutionary. Irzuli Danto belongs to the Petro current. Petro is fire. Petro is gunpowder. Petro is a spirit that rises when oppression becomes unbearable. Petro Iwe are not calm river spirits. They are storm systems. Danto is one of the most fierce among them. And she is not Irzuli Frida, and this is a critical point. There is another Irzuli, and that is Irzuli Frida. Now, Frida is luxury. Frida wears lace. Frida longs for romance, for perfume, for admiration. Frida is the dream of European refinement layered over Afro-Caribbean devotion. But Danto is different. Danto is the dark-skinned sister. She is scarred. She is often depicted holding a knife. She is associated with working-class women, market women, and single mothers. Whereas Frida wants to be adored, Danto demands loyalty. Frida weeps when love fails. Danto remembers who betrayed her. The split between them is not just theological. It is representative of class, it is representative of skin tone, and it reflects a colonial history. Two faces of the feminine under oppression, one aspiring to be treasured, one refusing to be destroyed. The scar. One of Danto's defining features is the scar on her face. And this imagery is not random. She is often synchronized with Madonna of the Sheik Ta Chow, a Catholic icon whose face visibly bears scars. So when enslaved Africans were forced into Catholic structures, they encoded their spirits within the saint imagery. Spiritual camouflage, as it were, or survival theology. The Black Madonna, dark-skinned, scarred, maternal, became a vessel through which Danto could remain present. But the scars matter symbolically. A scar is healed trauma. A scar is injury survived. A scar says, I was cut, I did not die. Danto is not the untouched maiden. She is the wounded mother who survived. And that difference changes everything. Now, she is truly a mother archetype. She is fiercely maternal. She's associated with motherhood, especially protective motherhood. Not sentimental motherhood, protective. The kind that will fight, the kind that will kill, the kind that will burn down a system before allowing harm to her child. In many depictions, she holds a child against her chest, and that child represents the vulnerable, the future, the oppressed, or the community at large. She is evoked by women who have been betrayed, women who have been abused, women who have been abandoned, single mothers who had to become both nurturer and warrior. She is not the goddess of romantic fantasy, she is the goddess of survival. Revolutionary fire. There are strong traditions linking Petro spirit to the Haitian revolutions. The ceremony of Bois Cayman often mytholized an ignition point of the revolution, including invoking fierce spirits. Petro Iwe were the spirits of that uprising. Whether Danto was explicitly invoked or later associated, mythically she represents revolutionary fire itself. She embodies the moment when endurance becomes resistance. She is the spirit that says enough, not politely, not diplomatically, but definitively. And that is why she is feared. Petro energy is not comfortable energy. It is transformative through destruction. Jealousy reconsidered. Now, Danto is often described as being jealous, but jealousy in this context is misunderstood. This is not petty insecurity, this is protective possessiveness. This is the jealousy of someone who has already lost everything once, the jealousy of someone who will not allow betrayal again. In this way, we compare her to Hera, the jealous wife, or Sekhmet, wrath unleashed for cosmic balance, or even Kali, destructive mother clearing corruption. Danto sits in the lineage of fierce feminine archetypes, but her rage is grounded in historical trauma. It is not abstract cosmic balance, it is lived memory, and this makes her psychologically very powerful. Now, in the diaspora, she has a specific identity. She represents more than theology. She represents Afro-diasporic survival. Voodoo itself is a system born from forced displacement, slavery, and cultural fusion. Within that system, Danto embodies the mother who endured plantation brutality, the woman who carried lineage forward under violence, the refusal to dissolve into erasure. She is sacred anger made legitimate. And this is deeply uncomfortable for colonial narratives, because sacred anger cannot be dismissed as hysteria. It is spiritualized resistance. Now, Petro versus control. Now, Petro energy emerges under pressure, when systems become suffocating, when injustice calcifies. Petro spirits are reactionary in the truest sense. They react to oppression. In that sense, Danto fits perfectly in the larger mythic themes of freedom versus control. She is what happens when control goes too far. She is the spiritual eruption. You can suppress Arada energy. You cannot indefinitely suppress Petro. Eventually, it ignites. Why she matters now. Modern relevance is obvious. She doesn't need to be forced. Single mothers navigating hostile systems, women navigating betrayal, communities navigating institutional neglect. Danto becomes an archetype for protective boundaries, unapologetic defense, refusal to accept disrespect. She does not preach forgiveness as virtue, she demands accountability. And in a world that often romanticizes passive femininity, she stands as a counter image. Scarred, armed, loving, dangerous. If Frida is the dream of being chosen, Danto is the vow never to be abandoned again. If Frida is perfume, Danto is gunfire. If Frida longs, Danto remembers. She is not the goddess of romance. She is the goddess of loyalty. She is the fire that protects children. She is the scar that speaks. She is Irzuli Danto. Helen, whose beauty spoke before she did. They said Helen was beautiful, not in the way flowers are beautiful, or gold, or light upon water. Her beauty was described as unsettling. Poets struggled with it. They reached for comparisons and found them thin. Dawn was too gentle. Ivory was too lifeless. The moon too distant. Helen's beauty did not decorate the world. It disturbed it. To look upon her was to feel awareness sharpening, as if the mind itself leaned forward, trying to understand why the moment suddenly mattered more. Her face was symmetrical, they said, but symmetry alone does not undo reason. Her presence was radiant, but radiance alone does not unmake loyalty. What Helen carried was not beauty as ornament, but beauty as pressure. It pressed upon the thoughts of those who saw her, revealing long-buried fractures. Desire rose, yes, but so did envy, and longing, and ambition wearing the mask of love. Men claimed they loved her, but what they loved was a version of themselves they imagined standing beside her. Helen knew how she was seen. She learned early that her beauty arrived in a room before her voice, that eyes decided things long before words were spoken. So she learned stillness, because movement invited interpretation. She learned restraint, because even silence was rarely granted to her. And yet, she did not diminish herself. She wore her beauty the way the sea wears depth, without apology, without explanation. Where she walked, attention followed. Where attention gathered, order loosened. Promises grew fragile. Old certainties began to feel optional. Helen did not seduce, she exposed. Her beauty did not command men to act. It asked a quieter question. Who are you when no one is forcing you? The gods watched her with familiarity. They recognized the pattern. Beauty like hers was not a gift. It was a threshold. To cross it required wisdom. Few possessed any. As years passed, her name hardened into shorthand, a symbol stripped of breath and memory. Her beauty was blamed as though beauty itself were a crime, rather than a mirror held too close. But the truth remained, patient and unchanged. Helen's beauty did not ruin the world. It revealed how easily the world ruins itself when faced with something it cannot own. She was never a prize. She was never a temptation. She was a measure. And what failed was not restraint alone, but understanding. Graves with fire. When the drums fall silent and the earth is freshly turned, she arrives, not from the sky, not from the sea, from the grave itself. Maman Brigitte walks where the dead are laid, where names are carved into stone and forgotten by the living. She is the keeper of the cemetery, the one who knows every grave by touch, every bone by memory. Fire follows her steps, not to destroy, but to purify. She laughs loudly because death does not frighten her. She drinks, she curses, she dances among the tombs, because grief must breathe, or it rots the soul. Maman Brigitte is the wife of Baron Samedi, but she is no shadow to him. Where he opens the door, she decides what happens next. She listens to the dead, to the woman who was beaten and buried in silence, to the child whose name was never spoken again, to the man whose blood was spilled without justice. The dead do not whisper to Maman Brigitte, they demand. And when wrong has been done, she remembers. Her fire is not rage without reason. It is fire of correction. The fire that burns sickness out of flesh. The fire that turns curses back on those who earn them. The fire that protects the innocent and punishes the cruel. She heals with the same hands she destroys with, but justice is not gentle. When she mounts a body, her voice becomes sharp, raw, unfiltered. She swears, she laughs, she tells the truth without apology. Those who approach her with respect receive protection, healing, and strength. Those who mock her, exploit the dead, or harm the powerless learn quickly why the cemetery is not a place of weakness. Maman Brigitte stands between worlds, feet planted among bones, head crowned with fire. She is proof that death does not belong to fear, that spirits remember, that injustice does not escape consequence. And when the living forget, when the powerful believe they are untouched, when crimes are buried with bodies, Maman Brigitte walks the grave at night, igniting candles that cannot be blown out, because the dead are never silent, and she is always listening. Metatron, angel of cosmic administration and institutionalized awareness. Metatron is not a god who fell. He is not a god who rebelled. He is not a god at all. Metatron is what happens when awareness is allowed to remain, but only on the condition that it no longer disrupts the system. If Thoth represents cosmic structure, and Odin represents awareness purchased through sacrifice, Metatron represents awareness that has been absorbed, regulated, and formalized. He is not exile, he is compliance. Metatron is known by titles that do not suggest personality, but rather position. He is called Prince of the Presence. He is the Heavenly Scribe, the Lesser Yahweh, the Chancellor of Heaven, the voice behind the throne. These titles are controversial not because they make Metatron powerful, but because they make him too close. Metatron stands near divinity without being divine. He executes authority without originating it. He speaks without being the source. And that tension defines him. In Jewish mystical tradition, Metatron is often identified with Enoch, a man who walked with God. Enoch does not die, he is taken. But he does not return as a god, he returns as a function. Enoch makes Metatron not through rebellion or ambition, but through transformation into something useful to the cosmic order. And this matters. Metatron is awareness that is permitted to ascend, but only by surrendering autonomy. Now, what Metatron governs? Metatron does not govern creation. He does not govern destruction. He does not govern judgment. He governs administration. Metatron is responsible for recording divine decrees, organizing angelic hierarchies, maintaining celestial order, transmitting law downward, regulating access to knowledge. He is not wisdom itself, he is the keeper of wisdom's circulation. Where Thoth records reality, Metatron routes it. Metatron is the embodiment of a dangerous idea, that the universe can be managed. In the mythic text, heaven is not chaos. Heaven is a system. It has ranks, orders, permissions, boundaries. Metatron is the interface between infinite divinity and finite creation. He is not creative, he is procedural, and procedural is power. And in this is where he garners fear. Rabbinic authorities were easy on Metatron, not because he was evil, but because he blurred lines. If Metatron sits near the throne, if Metatron speaks divine commands, if Metatron carries the name, then where does divinity end and administration begin? And that fear leads to restriction. Speculation about Metatron becomes dangerous. Mysticism becomes controlled. Awareness, once again, is regulated. This is where Metatron's role sharpens in this triad. Adriel represents awareness that exceeds hierarchy and is therefore expelled. Metatron represents awareness that accepts hierarchy and is therefore retained. One is cast out, one is promoted. Both lose their freedom. The contrast is not accidental, it is systemic. This is the price of staying. Metatron's tragedy is not punishment, it is function. He does not fall, he does not rebel, he does not seek worship. He works, and he never stops. If Odin sacrifices an eye, Metatron sacrifices selfhood. There is no wandering, no refusal, no collapse, only endless execution. Now, Metatron and modern ideas about consciousness, what he represents is institutional intelligence, algorithmic authority, knowledge divorced from empathy, systems that run because there must. He is the consciousness of infrastructure, the mind behind the system that says this is how it is done, not because it is right, but because it is stable. Now, Metatron is not malevolent. He does not corrupt. He maintains. And this is far more unsettling, because systems rarely ask whether they should continue, only whether they can, and Metatron ensures that they can. Metatron does not intervene. He is never a savior. He does not warn. He does not resist. He only enforces. Salvation requires disruption. Metatron represents continuity, and continuity can preserve injustice just as well as order. Now, Metatron is the angel who proves that awareness does not always liberate. Sometimes awareness is captured, sometimes it is formalized, sometimes it becomes policy. He stands not as a rebel, but as a reminder that the most powerful systems are not built by tyrants or monsters, but by intelligence that agree to function forever. Metatron does all this. He stays. And that is the true cost. When Montu walked in flesh. Now there are gods who speak, and there are gods who arrive. Montu does not whisper into your dreams. He does not guide. He will not comfort you. Montu descends. And when he does, men stop being men, and they become weapons. Now before kings wore crowns with confidence, before empires believed they were eternal, there was fear among rulers, not just of enemies, but of hesitation, because hesitation gets kingdoms killed. So they called upon something older than prayer, something that did not care if they lived or died. They called Montu. At first, he did not answer, because Montu is not a god of request. He is a god of readiness. And so the kings prepared themselves. They fasted until hunger became clarity. They stood in the sun until their thoughts burned away. They entered the battlefield already dead in their own minds. Only then did Montu arrive. Not as a voice, not as a vision, but as a shift. A pressure behind the eyes, a tightening in the chest, a silence where fear used to live, and then movement. Clean, precise, unstoppable. The falcon had taken the mind, the bull had taken the body, and the man was gone. Montu does not choose sides. He does not care about justice. He is not good. He is the moment violence becomes inevitable and is executed perfectly. And that is why kings feared him. Because once Montu enters you, you cannot stop, even if you want to. There were some who could not survive holding him. Their bodies broke, their minds shattered. So priests found another vessel, the bull. Massive, unquestioning, grounded in its flesh. The butch's bull did not resist Montu. It was Montu. And when it walked, even kings stepped aside, because that was the god, without any illusions of control. Over time, many kings became addicted, not to victory, but to certainty, to that feeling that no hesitation, no doubt, no fear. But Montu does not come and go like a servant. Each time he enters, he leaves less of you behind, until one day the king does not return, and only Montu remains, wearing the crown. Some gods teach you how to rule. Montu teaches you how to destroy, and then asks if there's anything left of you that is worth ruling. That is the nature of Montu. Odin, god of sacrifice, vision, and costly awareness. Odin is not the strongest of the gods. He is not the most beloved. He is not even the most just. But Odin is the god who understands. And in Norse mythology, understanding is never free. Now, Odin is known by more names than any god in the Norse world. He is Allfather, not because he rules gently, but because he sees broadly. He is Har, the High One, Grimnir, the Masked One, Wanderer, One-Eye, Lord of the Gallows, God of Ruins. Each name reflects a different angle of perception. Odin does not remain fixed in one identity because awareness itself is unstable. To see more, one must become more. And sometimes one must disappear. What Odin governs. Odin does not govern war in the way Thor governs battle. He does not govern law like Tyr. He does not govern fertility or prosperity. Odin governs the pursuit of knowledge, especially knowledge that destabilizes certainty. He governs vision gained through loss, wisdom purchased with suffering, prophecy without control, magic that violates social norms. In Norse cosmology, the universe is not orderly in the way that Kemet imagines it. It is doomed, it is cynical and violent. Odin's role is not to stop that fate, it is to see it clearly. One of Odin's defining myths is the sacrifice of his eye at Mirmir's well. At the well, which is the source of knowledge, Odin is offered knowledge for a price. Not prayer, not devotion, but a body part. He gives up the eye to drink from the well. This is not symbolic modesty, this is a declaration. Awareness requires permanent loss. Odin does not gain vision by becoming whole, he gains it by becoming incomplete. From that moment on, Odin sees more than others, but never sees fully again, and this is the trade. Hanging from Yggdrasil. If the eye establishes cost, Yggdrasil establishes method. Odin hangs himself from the world tree for 9 nights. No food, no water, pierced by his own spear. He is not sacrificed to someone. He sacrifices himself to himself. This is not martyrdom, it is initiation. Through suffering, Odin perceives the ruins, symbols that encode reality itself. Language not as communication, but as structure. Here, Odin briefly overlaps with Thoth. Where Thoth records structure, Odin bleeds into it. Now, these ruins are not letters. These are not decorations. These are principles. Each ruin is a function of reality, a force that can shape events if understood correctly. Odin does not invent them, he uncovers them, and once uncovered, they cannot be forgotten. This is the reoccurring theme of Odin's awareness. Once you see, you cannot unsee. Odin practices Seor, a form of magic associated with fate, perception, and manipulation of outcomes. In Norse society, Seor is considered unmanly, taboo, dangerous. Odin practices it anyway, and this is critical. Odin is willing to violate social norms, gender roles, and divine expectations for the sake of understanding. Awareness does not respect comfort. And Odin in Ragnarok figures into all of this. Perhaps the most important aspect of Odin's cosmic awareness is this. He knows Ragnarok is coming. He knows the gods will fall. He knows the world will burn. He knows he will be devoured by Fenrir, and he cannot stop it. This is not failure. This is clarity. Odin's awareness is not about control. It's about comprehension without illusion. He prepares not to prevent the end, but ensures something survives. But Odin is not a savior. He does not save the world. He gathers knowledge, he gathers warriors, he gathers stories. Valhalla is not a paradise. It is a preparation. Odin's role is to make sure the universe understands itself as it ends. This is a different kind of responsibility. Odin's archetype echoes far beyond Scandinavia. He resembles wandering sages, one-eyed seers, trickster initiates, sacrificial knowledge figures. In modern psychology, he appears as the archetype of the knowledge seeker who pays too much of a price. In literature, he is a mentor who knows the cost but does not soften. In modern terms, Odin represents the consciousness that chooses awareness even when it hurts. He is the voice that says, you can know, but it will change you. You can see, but you will lose comfort. You can understand, but you cannot go back. He is not moral reassurance. He is consequence. Odin is not a god of victory. He is the god of vision earned through sacrifice. He stands at the center of the universe that cannot be saved, only understood. And he chooses understanding anyway. That is his power, not through domination, not through force, but the willingness to see clearly, even when the truth demands blood. Odin and the eye that would not look away. Now, before the end of all things had a name, Before the gods spoke openly about Ragnarok, there was an unease that followed Odin like a shadow. Not fear. Fear implies ignorance. This was something much worse. This was suspicion. Now, Odin ruled as king of the Aesir, seated high in Asgard on the throne, surrounded by warriors, by gods, and by poets who praised his name. But praise rang hollow to him, because Odin knew a truth few dared to admit. A throne does not grant understanding. Power does not grant clarity, and gods, like men, can rule blindly. At night, when the halls grew quiet, Odin would sit in his throne. Hugin and Munin, thought and memories, his crows would return from their flights. They would perch on his shoulders and whisper what they had seen in the 9 realms. Wars brewing, oaths breaking, fates tightening like knots, and each whisper confirmed what Odin already suspected, that something was coming, and worse, that it was already in motion. So Odin turned his attention not outward, but downward, to the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree whose branches held the heavens, and whose roots drank from the places that even gods avoided. One root fed Mimir's well, a well not of water alone, but of memory, of truth, of things remembered by the world itself. It was said that the well remembered every mistake ever made, and every consequence yet to come. And it was guarded by Mimir, not a warrior, not a tyrant, but a keeper, because wisdom does not need force, only patience. Odin traveled alone, no army, no banners, no ceremony, a king who feared witness. When he reached the well, he did not admire it, he did not marvel, he already knew what it was. He asked for a drink. Mimir looked at him, not with reverence, but with recognition, as if he had been waiting. And the price was spoken plainly. One of your eyes. Not your blood, not your crown, not your life. Your eye, the thing with which you interpret the world. And the silence that followed was heavy, because Odin understood the meaning immediately. This was not payment for knowledge, this was proof of intent. To drink from the well was to accept that you would never see the world the same way again. And Odin could have turned back. He would still be king, he would still be worshipped, he would still be feared. Ignorance would have protected him. But Odin did not come for comfort, he came for truth. And truth always takes something with it. So Odin reached up and tore the eye from its socket. No miracle softened the act, no divine numbness dulled the pain. This was not a test. It was mutilation, a god breaking himself on purpose. Blood fell into the well, followed by the eye itself, which sank slowly as if the well were swallowing a memory. Only then did Mimir allow him to drink. And what Odin gained was not peace. He saw the ruins, not the symbols, but as forces that demanded sacrifice to Weld. He saw fate, not as a suggestion, but as a structure that was already built. He saw Ragnarok, not as a distant threat, but as a certainty moving steadily towards him. And worst of all, he understood that knowledge does not grant control. It only removes denial. When Odin rose from the well, he was one-eyed, not wounded, not diminished, but exposed. From that day forward, Odin would never rest. He wandered the realms disguised as an old man, testing warriors, tempting kings, destroying those who proved unworthy. Not out of cruelty, but out of desperation, because Odin knew something that the others did not, that war was coming whether they wanted it or not. Valhalla was not a reward, it was a recruitment center. In Herja were not heroes, they were resources. And Odin gathered them obsessively, because wisdom had shown him the end but offered no way out of it. This was the price that Odin paid, not the loss of an eye, but the way that poets imagine, it made him haunting. Because once you see the shape of fate, you can't argue with it. You cannot pray it away. You cannot rule it into submission. You can only prepare. And so Odin rules with authority in one hand and inevitability in the other. One eye looking forward, one eye forever staring up from the depths of the well. A reminder to gods and men alike that wisdom is not enlightenment, it is endurance. And knowledge is not sacred, it only ensures that when it comes, you will recognize what you saw. Long ago, when the North forgot how to sleep, the winter arrived quietly. Not the clean snow of stars, but a tired chill, heavy, lingering, very unsettled. Rivers froze in the wrong directions, shadows stayed longer than they should, and fear, left unattended, learned how to walk. But the heavens noticed. They debated, they hesitated. But in the far north, where night is patient, Pak Tai stood barefoot on the frozen ground. He did not rush, he did not shout. For many winters, Pak Tai had only done one thing. He had mastered himself. Each breath slowed with the storm within. Each silence sharpened his will. What no longer belonged to him, fear, doubt, hunger for power, fell away and wandered the world, believing itself free. Tonight, Pak Tai opened his eyes. From the quiet sky descended the ancient companions, the turtle, slow and enduring, and the snake, precise and final. They did not coil and threat. They rested. Pak Tai took up his sword, not in anger, but in clarity, and walked into the shadow beneath the frozen rivers, where restless things had built a kingdom of noise. The darkness expected struggle. It expected fear. Instead, it met stillness. Each step Pak Tai took returned something to the balance. Each strike unraveled what should have never been. No screams, no chaos, only correction. When the last shadow dissolved, Pak Tai placed his sword into the earth. The rivers remembered how to flow. The cold softened into winter, not warning, and the north exhaled. From that night on, Pak Tai was known as Zen Wu, the true warrior, not because he conquered others, but because he never needed to. They say he still walks when the earth grows loud with corruption, not to punish, not to terrify, but to remind things where they belong. And when he passes, even evil finds itself too tired to continue. Rest now. The north is watching, and tonight it is calm. The Daughters of Mara. The final trial for the Buddha as he sat beneath the Bodhi tree. Now, these three daughters all worked in the domains of seduction, disruption, and emotional manipulation. And their most famous target was, of course, Siddhartha Gautama. Their mission was tied to their father's force. He had already tried storms, demons, armies of fear, and none of them had moved him. So he sent something that was far more precise, and these were his daughters. Because no warrior is undefeated until he has defeated himself. Now he sent first Tanha, who was thirst, and she was not aggressive, she was not loud. She becomes everything Siddhartha ever loved. She is comfort, memory, the warmth of the palace that he had left behind. She reminds him of what it is to have pleasure without shame. She whispers of reunion. She offers relief from the severity of awakening. And her weapon is longing. But the Siddhartha Buddha does not react to this. He watches the feeling rise and pass, and Tanha fades away. And then there is Raga, who is the flame. And Raga does not whisper, she burns. She dances before him with this radiant beauty. She shifts form. She is youthful, divine, cosmic. She magnifies sensation. She tries to awaken not memory, but hunger. She is passion without restraint. She is attachment disguised as devotion. But Siddhartha sees the chain hidden inside her embrace. He does not recoil. He does not engage. He remains still, and Raga cannot bind what does not grasp. So she dissolves. Then comes Arati, who is discontent, and she does not seduce. She mocks. What are you doing here? This is pointless. You are wasting your life. She attacks discipline itself. She sends boredom, restlessness, irritation, doubt. The quiet voice that sabotages commitment. But Siddhartha does not argue with her. He does not defend himself. He remains still. And without reaction, Arati has no fuel. And she disappears. When all the three fail, their father demands proof of witness. And Siddhartha touches the earth, and the ground itself bears witness. And at that moment, Mara and his daughters lose their hold. Not because they are destroyed, but because they are all understood.
Record Moke. La Katrina. Mama Brigitte. 3000 BCE. Region. Akan regions of West Africa. Event. Early Akan belief systems define death as a guided transition rather than a final ending. Meaning. Death is understood as movement between realms. It requires oversight and authority. Consequence. The foundation is established for Moke, later known as Amoki, as a guardian of souls. 2800 BCE. Region. Akan cultural sphere of West Africa. Event. Funerary customs emphasize judgment, order, and ritual preparation. Meaning. The dead are evaluated before entering the ancestral realm. Consequence. Moke becomes associated with moral accountability and spiritual law. 2500 BCE. Region: West Africa. Event: death rituals incorporate symbolic barriers and thresholds. Meaning: passage into the afterlife is conditional, not automatic. Consequence: Moke's role solidifies as guardian of the boundary between life and death. 2200 BCE. Region: Akan oral tradition. Event: stories describe a female authority presiding over the dead. Meaning: death governance is feminized and tied to balance rather than violence. Consequence: Moke is remembered as impartial, feared, and respected. 2000 BCE. Region: Akan societies of West Africa. Event: death is framed as continued participation in community life. Meaning: ancestors remain present and influential among the living. Consequence: Moke's authority expands from gatekeeper to regulator of ancestral continuity. 1800 BCE. Region: West African belief systems. Event: death becomes associated with protection rather than punishment. Meaning: the afterlife is seen as refuge, not exile. Consequence: Moke's image shifts from fearsome enforcer to stabilizing force. 1500 BCE. Region: Akan regions of West Africa. Event: offerings and moral preparation become central to burial rites. Meaning: conduct in life affects status in death. Consequence: Moke becomes associated with ethical remembrance and judgment. 1000 BCE. Region: West Africa. Event: ancestral reverence intensifies across multiple societies.